Today I am going to be showing you the basics of crochet. There are just a few things you need to know to get started making beautiful projects. I actually made this crop top here using all of the simple steps that I'm going to show you today. So once you know the basics, it's really easy to make intricate, beautiful things that look complicated but are actually really simple. You only need a few things to get started crocheting. The first is, of course, some yarn. I have a pretty heavy weighted yarn here today that we're gonna be using. The next thing you need is a crochet hook. You will know the size crochet hook you need thanks to the back of the yarn label. So each yarn that you purchase will have a label. On the back, it'll tell you which crochet hook they recommend using for that specific yarn. The next thing you'll need in order to weave in your ends when you're finished with a project is a tapestry needle here. And the final thing you need is just a pair of scissors. The first thing you're going to do to start your crochet project is create a slip knot. A slip knot is formed by taking the end of your yarn, creating a loop, twist the yarn so that the end piece goes over the top of the long piece, so you can see it here. So this piece is on top of this piece. Pinch your fingers through the loop, grab for the long piece, and pull it through the loop. And that'll create a slip knot, and you can easily shorten it. You can make it longer if you need to. You want to have that adjustable size. Next, place your crochet hook through that loop and cinch it tight, but not tight enough that you can't move it around easily. Now that we have our slip knot on our crochet hook, the next step is to create your chains. The chains in crochet will determine how long your project is going to be. This will vary depending on the project that you're doing. I'm going to start by showing you just a little swatch of crochet. So this is the double crochet, and then we also have our single crochet. So the single crochet, you see if I pull it, there's not as much space. It's a tighter knot throughout the pattern. But they end up looking very similar in the long run. So even though these swatches look really similar to one another when they're done, this actually has double the rows, but you use them for different things. So depending on the pattern, you'll want to use a double or a single crochet. So we're going to start with the single crochet today, and I'm going to chain 16. When you chain, you want to chain the length that you want your pattern plus one chain, and that'll make sense more in just a second. To start your chain, grab for the long length of yarn, and I kind of hold the tail down just so it doesn't get in the way. So grab for your crochet hook, the long chain of yarn here. I like to wrap it around my finger. I take my crochet hook, wrap the crochet hook around the yarn, and pull it through that loop. And that creates our first chain. Do that again. We wrap it around the hook and pull it through the chain. So that's 2. And for this one, I'm gonna do 16, which will give us 15 crochet holes. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. When you're creating these chains, you want to make sure that they are loose, but not too loose. It's kind of a careful balance. You want to keep enough tension on your yarn that they still are tight and about the same size throughout. This can take a little bit of practice. If you need to, all you have to do is take your yarn off that loop and undo those chains, and they come off really easily. So it's really easy to backtrack in crochet. If you mess up, it's not a big deal. You can easily backtrack in your pattern and start again. So for single crochet, you do chains that are the length of your pattern plus 1. And here's why. When we start our single crochet, we're going to skip the first chain. So skip the first chain that you see here and start your single crochet by going into that second chain. And we are going to start our single crochet by taking our hook, skip the first chain and go into the second chain. So hook your crochet hook around that second chain, wrap the yarn around the hook, pull it through the loop, then wrap your crochet hook around the yarn again and pull it through the 2 loops. And that's your first single crochet. So we'll move on to our second single crochet, which is going to be in this loop here. Hook your crochet hook through that loop, grab for the yarn, pull it through the loop, and you should now have 2 loops on your crochet hook. Wrap the yarn around the hook again and pull through both loops. Again, hook the yarn, wrap around, pull through, wrap around, and pull through. And you just continue repeating that pattern until you reach the end of your chains. And we should have 15 single crochets once we reach the end. So once you reach the end of your pattern here, that was our last chain. To start the next row, you will chain 1. So again, to chain, we wrap the hook around the yarn and pull through. So that's a chain. Then we flip our work over. So again, we're flipping the work over to the other side. And we're going to start the pattern again. So we skip the first chain and move on to the second chain. Hook your needle through, pull it through the loop, wrap around, and pull through both loops. And we continue on with our single crochets in that same pattern across. And there you have it. Chain 1, flip your pattern. So you'll repeat this pattern over and over and over again until you get a nice swatch that looks like this. And you can keep going with this pattern. If you keep going, make it, 6 feet long, you have a scarf. And it's as simple as that. You can make dishcloths, scarves, blankets, whatever your heart desires. To end this pattern, if you wanted to tie off, you would simply pull your hook out. So you give yourself a larger loop here, leave some slack. Take your hook out, give yourself a good tail, and trim the end. Then take the end, loop it through that last chain there, and pull tight to create a knot. From there, grab your tapestry needle, hook the yarn through the tapestry needle, and just weave in the ends here. So I like to weave in for a while. I do quite a few loops just to make sure my pattern is really secure. Take your time here so that you don't ruin the pattern. And then trim that end. And there you have it. And you do the same thing with this end as well. You just weave it in and trim it. The second really common stitch that you'll use in crochet is the double crochet, which is this stitch here. To create a double crochet, you take your hook, wrap your hook around the yarn, enter in through the chain, wrap your hook again and pull through. So you have 3 loops now. Then wrap your yarn again, pull through 2, wrap your yarn and pull through the last 2. Wrap your hook, go through the next chain in the series, pull through that loop, wrap the yarn around your hook again, pull through the next 2, wrap your hook around your yarn and pull through the last 2. Continue on with this pattern until you reach the end of your chain. Once you reach the last chain in your series, you'll flip the pattern over and start the next row. You do that by creating 2 chains. So chain 1, chain 2, and then flip your pattern over. To start the next row, You're going to skip the 2 chains you just created. These will act as your first double crochet, if you will. So you skip these 2 chains, 1, 2, and you'll start your double crochet pattern in the 3rd chain. Wrap your yarn around, hook through that 3rd chain, wrap your yarn again, pull through the 1st loop, wrap your yarn again, pull through 2 loops, wrap your yarn around, and pull through the last 2 loops. And you can continue on in that pattern until you reach the end. In this case, 10 double crochets. So once you reach the end of your first row, you'll start the 2nd row by chaining 2, 1, 2, flip your pattern over, and start the 2nd row by skipping the first 2 chains. So skip 1, 2, and begin your double crochet series in that 3rd chain. So double crochet, and then continue on with that series until you reach the end of your 2nd row. And you can continue on with this pattern until the piece is as long or as short as you'd like it to be. These 2 knots, the single crochet and the double crochet, are really the foundation for your pieces. So get really good at these. I recommend you practice a lot. And once you have these pieces down, then start to graduate to more advanced patterns. This crop top here, this pattern has chains, single crochets, and double crochets. That's it. The reason that it looks so intricate is because I would skip chains and add chains in the middle. So it looks a lot more complicated than it is just because of the way that I'm shaping the piece. But it's really not that difficult to make once you know the basics. Same with this blanket here. This blanket is actually all just double crochets, but I created the pattern by skipping certain chains and then also chaining multiple chains together, which I know that can sound really complicated if you're not familiar with patterns. But once you know the basics, you can really start to utilize some of these techniques in your blankets or scarves and make beautiful, intricate pieces that look really fancy, but are actually pretty simple. I'm going to continue crocheting because I like that so much more than end screens. But if you'd like to watch more of our videos, they're over there. Or you can subscribe and watch all of our videos right here.